Oops. You know, Ronnie is suffering from what we refer to in our business as multiple employer syndrome. And Keith, it would appear as though, at least for today, a different employer has taken precedence over us. And all I know is that you're here and I'm here and Ronnie is somewhere else working for somebody else. I know we can handle it. I just want to make the point that, you're here and I'm here.
Well, Gary, you can always count on me. I'm like that geyser up in Yellowstone, Old Faithful. I'm here at your beck and call.
Well, we've done it before, and we can do it again. And I count on you to carry the show on these days.
I'm totally immersed in the Mets this offseason.
The Major League Baseball just released all the game times for the regular season, which it's going to be a full season, it looks like, but we're still going to be doing road games remotely. And I was just thinking about what happens when we have those 10 o'clock games in San Diego and we're sitting in our booth at Citi Field or wherever we're going to be doing the road games from this year and doing those games in the middle of the night.
I'm surprised it took you so long to catch on. I've already made my hotel reservations in the city. So I'm not driving home those nights, I tell you.
What's funny is that, they put out all the health and safety protocols for Major League Baseball for the season to come, including for spring training. And they're limiting travel from the East Coast of Florida to the West Coast of Florida. You're not allowed to do that, but they're not keeping teams on the East Coast during the regular season. They're still flying out to California and Arizona and all that. So I'm not quite sure I understand all the protocols, but they're revamping the spring training schedule. They're going to maybe play some fewer games, 7-inning games, 5-inning games, intra-squad games. So spring training is going to be different. I don't know how that affects players' preparation for the regular season. Probably not the hitters so much, but the pitchers.
Well, let's talk about how it affects us. SNY is not going to cut our salary if it's a 5-inning game, are they?
I have always thought that, especially early in spring training, when we broadcast the games, that there should be a 2-hour limit, right? Because by the time you get to the 2-hour mark of those early spring training games, most of the players that the fans back home really want to see have showered, left, and are on the golf course. And it's the guys wearing number 93 and 97 who are out in the field. And, we're bantering and doing our thing, but, the game has probably lost a little bit of the interest for the folks back home. So I don't have a problem with the 5 and 7-inning games. I think that might play right into our win sock.
It certainly plays into mine, and but I've never forgotten my roots. When I was 19 years old, just in what year in AA, I was invited to my first major league camp, and my number was 57. And I'm one of those guys that was glad it was 9 innings. I got to get in late and get an at bat off of George Culver or George Stone. So that was my first time in a big league uniform. I was just thrilled to be on the field.
You say 57 like it's a bad thing.
It was a linebacker.
But Johan Santana might beg to differ.
Yes, that's true.
Right. Now you've got, guys during the regular season wearing numbers that run the gamut, but
Yep.
It used to be that there would never be a number outside of the, higher than the 50s.
Right.
During a regular season. Now all bets are off.
You have double numbers now.
Yeah, sometimes you do. That's right. So the other piece of news that came out this week was Major League Baseball announcing that the baseball is going to be deadened somewhat, which I find fascinating, first of all, because when the ball has been juiced in the past, they never announced that. And they always pleaded ignorance about how the baseball got to be juiced. But clearly there have been a couple of occasions over the last 5 or 10 years when the ball has clearly been juiced. Now they're going to try to take a little bit of the life out of the ball. They say that maybe on a 400-foot fly ball, it might affect it by 1 to 3 feet. And I'm wondering what your thoughts on the subject are.
Well, I'm all for it. I think the ball has been juiced, but this is a very subtle, not in our case, experts like you and I, Gare. This is really overt mistake on their part. They are really admitting that they can alter the baseball, and they've always denied it, like you said. So I find that statement incredible. I have not seen that, but I am all for it in this case, because what was the year we went to Atlanta, in the first year of that stadium in Atlanta, and that ball was flying out in April? You remember?
Mm-hmm.
And we went to the other ballparks and they're flying out. I still remember the first year at Citi Field with the Great Wall of Flushing, and David Wright hitting fly balls, all these hitters coming in and hitting balls to left center field, that deep part of the park, and the ball's not going out, and they're just going like this in frustration. Now, how many home runs do we see go into the second tank over the last 2-3 years? So I'm all for it.
So let me ask you this, just on a big picture basis. Clearly home runs and strikeouts have become the coin of the realm in baseball over these last half decade to decade. How much do you think the ball being juiced has had to do with that? And do you think that deadening the ball will change anybody's approach to the game, whether it be pitchers or hitters?
Well, I think it remains to be seen. I think each player is an individual strength. It may not affect a guy like Pete Alonso,
right,
who I don't think, if Pete played back in the 50s, there's not going to be a ballpark that can hold
right.
Pete, or the 60s or the 70s. It's the guy that all of a sudden hits 25 home runs when maybe he's a 15 guy. I was a 15 guy. Would I have been a 25 guy? Would I have been a 30 guy? I don't know. We'll never know. So will it alter? Well, if you're going down the tubes and you got nothing on the scorecard but an F9, F8, F7, you better make an adjustment. And maybe we're getting back to a little old-fashioned, old-style baseball. I understand the thought. There's 2 outs, and get a pitch to hit to drive in a close game, and or strikeout. There's a time for that late in the game. If you're a guy that hits 20 home runs for 2 strikes. But what would have happened in 1986 in Game 6? What was a 2-out rally? I mean, they eschewed the 2-out rally, and how it's hard to combine hits together. But it happens, and that's called a rally. And that's exciting baseball.
Well, undoubtedly. But what you just said is something that hitters say today. It's hard to put hits together. And what I hear hitters saying all the time is pitchers are throwing harder than ever. Their spin rates are greater than ever. They've got more advancements in terms of making their pitches more difficult to hit. I mean, you can argue about control and all that, but that pitching is harder to hit than ever, which makes it that much more difficult to string together 2 or 3 hits, which makes it more desirable to try and score a run by hitting the ball over the fence. Does that make sense to you?
How do I speak to that when I'm not in the box, actually hitting? I see a lot of, excuse the phrase, a lot of doo-doo out there in bullpens. Okay, guys, give me a bat, and they're falling behind 2-0, and
they are throwing harder.
There are more pitchers today throwing harder than not a lot harder, but there's more of them that throw hard. They're all 6'7". They're big guys. It's just the advancement of the physicality of the athlete today.
You used to be a big guy.
I'm 6 feet.
I know. I'm saying you used to be
an inch.
You used to be a big guy, but now relatively,
you think?
you're not well compared to the ball players now.
I was 203, 6 feet 203. You know, I guess I was, Gary. Good, thank you. I was a big guy. So,
I always thought of you as being rather formidable. So
Dave Parker was a big guy. Willie Stargell,
Frank Howard, yeah, sure.
You know, those were the guys. Winfield, they were I think the beginning. Parker and Winfield were the beginning of the modern athlete, what they are today.
Yeah.
But in answer to your question, I never answer questions. I know Greg's listening right now, our producer. He's probably Keith. Stick to the question. Don't veer off.
Keith, you're rambling.
Pitching, you have to make adjustments as a hitter, and I think that the fact that they have gone all or nothing have made them more susceptible. Pitchers, no matter how good, Tom Seaver would hang a breaking ball every now and again in the wrong spot to the wrong hitter. I mean, Tom didn't go undefeated. So, you know, I just think that there were tougher outs because guys were more line drive hitters than today. And I think I can pretty much, it's fact, the strikeouts are going up, 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 up. So, you know, maybe we're getting back a little bit to old-fashioned baseball. Maybe Major League Baseball is realizing that how much more exciting it is when you have a bunch of guys that hit doubles. I mean, you don't have to. You get one runner on first base, Gary, and you hit a double. I could score on a double in the gap. That's a run.
Maybe not today. Maybe not today.
Well, no, you're kidding. I get a flat tire rounding third. But go ahead. Next question.
Well, it's not a question. It's a conversation, Keith. You can initiate as well.
Well,
I was going to bring up Trevor Bauer signing with the Dodgers. Obviously, it came down to the Mets and Dodgers, and whether he intended to or not. Bauer teased Met fans into thinking that he was going to sign with them. Decided to take actually less money over 3 years, a little more money over the first 2 years if he opts out. But he ends up going back home to Southern California, which I don't think was a big surprise to anybody. So from a Mets standpoint now, the rotation looks fairly set, right? The top five, DeGrom, Carrasco, Stroman, Peterson, Lucchesi. With you got Jordan Yamamoto, and you've got Franklin Kilome, and you've got Jared Eichhoff. I mean, all these those are your depth pieces,
right?
So, do you need to add your depth to your depth pieces, and particularly the guy who the Mets have been rumored to at least be thinking about is Jake Arrieta, who appears to be on the downside of his career at age 35, and would definitely be a back of the rotation insurance type proposition at this point. The other guy who's out there is James Paxton, an oft injured pitcher, but who, when he is healthy, obviously is a major piece. He'd be much more of a middle of the rotation kind of starter. So I guess the question is, do the Mets need to add to their starting pitching arsenal at this point, or are they good enough to go into the season with what they have?
Well, number one, there's no great rush to make a move. Trades are made in spring training. Trades are made during the season. To me, the only three solid givens are DeGrom, Carrasco, and Stroman. Now, David Peterson, I think he's got stuff like Tommy John. I mentioned it last year on the air, that big slider he's got, knows how to pitch. There's no guarantee about him right now, although I think there's a tremendous upside, tremendous potential. But I remember Bob Gibson telling me he's got potential means he hasn't made it yet. So I always remember Bob saying that one time in spring training. You tend to listen to Bob Gibson when he talks, especially when you're 19, 20 years old. But I'm very high on him. I like Lucchesi a lot because he's a left-hander. He's got the funky motion, the real weird motion, the kind of pitcher I would not like to face. Hard to pick up, and he's got a change up, and he's a left-hander. Now, a lot of times when guys get a fresh start, my goodness, they really are focused going in. It's a new challenge. So that is an effect for Lucchesi. You got Syndergaard waiting in the wings. So that's June, maybe July. They say he's ahead of schedule. I wouldn't rush him. And he's working hard without the T-shirt. But the other moves that they made, I think, will bolster their AAA. I'm perfectly content going forward with this 5. And if something goes haywire and someone doesn't produce, then you look to make a trade as the season goes forward. Remember, Steve Cohen said he was going to spend but be prudent, and I think he's done that.
Yeah,
I've loved everything they have done this offseason as far as where they spent their money, their big money, who they brought here, and then the little pieces they brought. This is good. They're building a team right now to win. I mean, with Villar now here, it's a veteran ball club.
It's very interesting because there's a perception in some quarters, and I don't share this perception, I don't think you do either, that because the Mets didn't sign Realmuto, because they didn't sign Bauer, because they didn't sign Springer, that somehow this offseason was a failure. And I think it's just the opposite. I think making the Lindor and Carrasco trade was an enormous win-win. And you mentioned Jonathan VR, Albert Almora. I mean, the depth pieces that they're picking up are perfect for the unit that they've got, I think.
I agree. And it looks like correct me if I'm wrong, that we're not going to have a DH this year in the National League. If that's the case, you need a bench more so than the American League, because you're going to be making pitching changes. And I think this is the best offseason I've seen the Mets have since I can remember, as far as building this club and answering all the needs that are there on that roster. And I don't feel they have to go out and get another big free agent. I really don't.
Well, there still is talk that the Mets might be interested in upgrading at third base and making a trade for Chris Bryant. Justin Turner's still out there, but I don't think the Mets have interest there.
Well, remember, Justin Turner was not one of Sandy's favorites.
Right. But to me, a concern certainly has to be that if there is no DH, and the closer we get to the season without any agreement on it, it looks more likely that there's not going to be a DH, even if it's just for this 1 year. And that leaves you, with a defense which is not what it could have been if you had a DH. I mean, it's kind of ironic, right? That if you have a DH, it improves your defense. But that would have been the case with the Mets, because you could move Alonso to DH, move Smith to first base. You upgraded first base. You play
I don't feel bad.
Almora in center,
right.
and Nimmo in left, and you're a better defensive team at 3 different positions. But that's not the case. So now you have, assuming it stays the way it is, Nimmo in center, Dom playing most of the left field, and JD Davis playing most of the third base. So where does that, we've talked so much about the Mets' inattention to defense over the last few years. Where does that leave them now?
Well, I think you're obviously going to a pitcher like, say, Stroman and Peterson, ground ball pitchers. Then you're going to want your strength, your best defense on the infield. So Mets have enough versatility in their roster. So I would want my best defense with those ground ball pitchers. So oops, I hit my keyboard there. Sorry. That wouldn't be a game where I'd have JD at third base. Maybe
so you'd have to play Guillorme at second,
or
VR
at second, and move
McNeil over to third.
McNeil to third. To me, there's no answer for Dom in left field, and Dom has to play. He's one of your better hitters, and that is going to be a negative defensively. And this is I'm going to say it again. It's no criticism of Dom. The fact that Dom is playing out of position, and he's this very sincere guy, you know that. And he knows when he messes up in the field, he feels terrible, but it didn't affect him at the plate. A lot of players play out of position, they can't handle it. It affects them, it just ruins their whole game. It didn't happen with Dom. Dom had a fantastic year at the plate. He's got to play. So I think what you're going to see a lot of, and we saw it last year, and you hate to take Alonso's bat out of the lineup, but it's pick your poison. Either Pete comes out, Dom goes to first, or Pete stays in and Dom comes out. Nimmo goes to left on a seventh inning, sixth inning on, 3-run game, 2-run game. I don't know. You got to make moves for defense, which means more import for your bench, which I think the Almora pickup, whether he hits or not, he's kind of faded from his first couple of years in the big leagues. Last year is a hard barometer to really have a feel for any player with a short season, but it does not affect the defense. And Almora brings a center fielder to the game that's going to get a lot of playing time late.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to expect from Almora. To me, it feels like what you've done is just trade the same piece, right? You had Lagares, then you had Keon Broxton, then you had Marisnik, now you have Almora. They're all right-hand hitting, good defensive center fielders who haven't hit as much as you had hoped. And Almora certainly is of that ilk, but he's 26, and who knows? He's obviously a terrific athlete and an outstanding center fielder, and that will help in that respect. But I don't know if you're getting more than that, right? If there's an upside there.
It's going to be tough on him too, not being able to play. He's not going to play every day. It's the hardest job in the world to be a platoon player, and it's usually the veteran that's the platoon player, or the guy on your bench was the veteran. And so today's game has changed because of the salaries being so high, where you could look how long Davey Lopes played and how important a great player that he was after he stopped playing every day, and he still stole bases and still was a great player off the bench. Those days are over. A guy like Davey Lopes today be making $15 million, and you can't have a $15 million player on your bench. So, I like the roster, and I think that Luis is going to have a lot of choices to make, and that's a good thing for a manager.
The Jonathan VR pickup was interesting because a lot of times you tend to gravitate toward players who play well against you, right? Or maybe that's not true anymore because you rely so much more on analytics now than you do on the eye test. But Jonathan VR is a really good player. He was a stolen base champion. He's got some pop. He hits from both sides of the plate. He can play multiple positions. He's a really good piece. But he played so badly against the Mets last summer that it's almost shocking when you trade for a player who had a particularly awful year playing against you. Don't you think that's odd?
And it wasn't just one game or one series. I mean, that one time he struck out on ball fours all over. It was almost, I don't want to say comical, but it was flabbergasting.
Remember when he swung 3-0 with the bases
loaded? Oh my God. I remember it. Are you kidding? I just looked on Twitter this morning and someone put up all the at-bats that he was swinging and missing. I thought that was hilarious.
But he's a really good player, and he's going to help. And it's interesting having he and Guillorme together on the bench because Guillorme is the better defender and VR is the better offensive piece. Although Guillorme had a really, really good offensive year last year, so you don't know, whether that's indicative of what he can do over a full season or whether it was more fluky. But he certainly advanced his status as a guy who's deserving of more playing time as well.
Well, I just think that Guillorme is going to have to always watch his weight. He was in shape last year. He got a little porky a couple years ago. And you're sitting on the bench. And I never realized it when I got called up to the big leagues and then I got benched. And you're used to the minor leagues playing every day. You don't realize what it is to be a bench player. You have to go out early to the ballpark and take extra batting practice to try to stay sharp. You don't even think about that in the minor leagues when you're an everyday player. So that happened to me. Willie Crawford got me in Atlanta, woke me up at around 11:30. I used to get up at noon then, Gare. And he said, I'll meet you at 2:00 in the lobby. We're going out to the park to hit. And I said, no, what are you talking about? He goes, you better be here. I'm going to come get you. And I didn't realize, because I had played every day. Well, the same thing for a guy like Viorme. And I also feel, Gary, that Chili Davis has brought a different philosophy. And I'm not saying because Chili's my friend, and I played against him, and I had great respect for him, and we're good friends. But I really think he brought a different, even though he wasn't there last year, a different philosophy as to when K-Long was here, with everybody trying to hit the ball, pull the ball, hit a home run, which played right into Yankee Stadium where K-Long came from. Chili was more of a gap-to-gap hitter, and I think he really helped a lot of hitters. And look what happened with Conforto last year with the year he had.
Yeah, I'm hoping Chili can be on site this year, because I know that he was able to participate, but it's different when a guy's not in the dugout during games, right?
Yep, I agree.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, Ron, go on.
I was going to say, speaking of being in the dugout, last year was Luis Rojas's first year as manager, and it was a strange year in every respect. The way he got the job late, and then going through spring training, and then having spring training shut down, and then coming back for the summer camp, and all the protocols. And there were so many things to have to live through last year. And on the field, everything that could have possibly gone wrong for this team went wrong. They certainly, I think you'd have to say, they underperformed their talent last year in the short season. So I guess my question is, when you look at Luis Rojas coming back for what presumably will be a full season, what are the things that you're looking for from him? What does he need to improve, or does he get just a clean slate because last year was so weird?
Well, if the club, no manager is safe if the club gets off to an abysmal start. The only thing I think that I felt that Louis kept his pitchers in there a little too long. And you know me, I love the starter. And if a starter's out there pitching his fanny off, I'm not going to pull him at 4 2/3 innings if he's really laboring and he needs one out. He's doing it's a gutty performance. I want to get him that out, get him to where he has a chance for the win. I felt stayed too long sometimes with pitchers, and it was both starters and relievers. And I think that maybe he should, with Jeremy Hefner, like David relied on Mel Stoudemire on our 80s team, and be more. If I was a manager, what do I know about pitching? I haven't seen enough, but Whitey Herzog said, I can recognize when a pitcher doesn't have it. Now that's from the dugout. But you know what that is? That's years of experience being in the dugout. That point of view, field level, looking, here's home plate, and you're looking and you're watching the ball. I've been in the dugout. It's fast coming in. I never pay attention whether a pitcher had it or not. You can tell we threw a lazy breaking ball. But that's just years of experience that comes with being a manager or a coach and watching. So my point is, I think that maybe Louis will tell Jeremy, hey, look, I'm going to have to lean on you. I wasn't a pitcher. I'm really going to need you here. And I want you to pay attention. And I'm sure he does. Not that he. And if you feel that this starter doesn't have it this day, let me know. And that'll get my focus on that, because a manager's got everything to think about. He's, not early in the game, maybe not, but late in the game, certainly, with getting the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th inning when they have to manage when there's no DH, you can get you can miss things. And I think that Jeremy will have to have a more prominent role and have his opinion mean more, and put forth his opinion to Louis.
And I think also, part of that is knowing who's who on your staff, right? we've said this before. Managers manage to pitch counts because that's what they're told to do, but they've also managed up to pitch counts. Like, I'm leaving this guy in because he hasn't thrown his 80 pitches yet. Whereas maybe this is the day he should be throwing 40 pitches and get out of there because he doesn't have it, right? But also, you have to know that a Jacob deGrom or a Noah Syndergaard may be different coming back from Tommy John, but those guys are capable of pitching deeper into games than your back of the rotation guys, and
right.
you have to manage that way as well.
Agreed. I mean, Stroman is not a big guy. Maybe you want to be judicious with his innings pitched. Maybe he's not a guy that 7 innings is max for him. But certainly, like deGrom, and certainly a workhorse like Syndergaard can go deeper in the game, and that's knowing your personnel, and that's part of managing. It's part of being a pitching coach.
All right. Well, I'm sorry that we did not get into any viewer questions today.
I was very talkative today.
We'll pick up on that next week. But I do have one more question for you before we go.
Yes.
How was the dentist today?
I may have to have a root canal. My tooth is killing me. Upper. And I can't see the guy until Monday. I saw my dentist today, and he gave me a little bit of something to like sleep at night because it hurts. And I'm seeing the guy in the morning on Monday, get a scan, and I have a hunch I'm going to be in the dental chair getting a root canal.
Well, you were a hero today. I mean, on a day when Ronnie opted for the alternate employer, you carried the load.
Well, I'm living alone.
You were like Jim Brown in 1965. You were carrying the bacon.
Well, fortunately, I'm living alone, so I wasn't able to bark at anybody.
Not even the cat?
No, I'd be alone. No, but it's been throbbing. And it's no fun when you have these.
All right. Well, I think we have one more of these before we head for spring training next Thursday at 4:00. And hopefully Ronnie will be back and joining us. And who knows, maybe one of us will find somebody else to work for next week.
How are things going with basketball?
Oh, really well. Seton Hall's 8-5 in the Big East. We got a game with Marquette coming up on Sunday. So
I got your. Oh, send me your address. I'll send you the hand warmers. Okay, send me your address.